contacted me to do this training. It was, and actually let me, maybe, it's open, it's just hasn't, this hasn't been closed, but it's immigration studies. So Paula asked me to do a training on the types of relief that is available for immigrant victims of domestic and sexual violence. So before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of that, and as a segue from our discussion about protective orders, how are people who don't speak English as their native language, how do they access protective orders in this jurisdiction? So what happens? Do you know?
We haven't had one.
So probably not very well. Probably.
That's what I was thinking.
You said about the need for some Spanish brochures. Have you had?
Yeah, we have a Hispanic attorney in the office, and my thought process is wherever he goes, he can make sure that those brochures are available. He did a health fair this summer, and I had him take a lot of the brochures with him when he went, because I feel like they're not very aware of the services available, and they're afraid to come forward a lot of times.
Yes, right. And we're going to get into some of the whys regarding that, why people are afraid to come forward to ask for help. So a petitioner, someone who is, say, a victim of family abuse, who would want to get a protective order, let's say they show up at court services unit, would they be able to get an interpreter right away, or call someone through language lines, or we don't know?
We wouldn't have one right away.
We would not.
The police officers usually call
Yeah.
out somebody to the scene
Yeah.
who comes, but
Right. So I ask these questions not to put you all on the spot or, to make you feel like you're deficient in any way. It's just that the reality is that, especially in places that are more remote, that are harder to reach, it's harder to get those resources. It's obviously hard to have someone 9 to 5 available to speak every language that someone might need. On the other hand, folks, whether they speak the language or not, should be able to access our court systems, our government agencies. It's actually a Title VI issue, right? A federal requirement of law that people are able to access our government agencies. So that's partly where that project under the JEEP grant came from, trying to help petitioners whose native language is not English access protective orders. So I'm hoping that after we talk today, I might be able to identify some folks and contacts that we can continue to talk about this and see how we can help you all with that. Okay? So, what we're going to talk about now, and as always, please interject with your questions. This is going to be about the types of things that are types of visa applications that might be available for certain victims of domestic or sexual violence who are undocumented. And I'll even explain what I mean when I say undocumented. Because a lot of people think if you're not a U.S. citizen, you're undocumented. And that's not the case. If you have a visa, and we'll get more into this, you are documented. You have legal status. That's what that means. You have legal status. Now, it might be temporary based on the purpose of that visa, but you have legal status, you're documented, you're allowed to be in the United States. You're not in danger of being deported. But for folks who are undocumented or whose visas expired, or whose visas have expired, especially if they're victims of domestic or sexual violence, that's sort of another layer that abusers can use to manipulate them and prevent them from coming forward and seeking help from law enforcement, from the prosecution, from many other resources that are available in our community. So hopefully this will help you think through how you can help some of your clients with these issues that prevent them from seeking help. All right, so this is an agenda for a longer training that I would do on this issue. I'm really just going to touch on it but you have these materials in this PowerPoint document, and as always, I hope that I've made clear that you can always call me or email me. If you email me and I don't get back to you within 24 hours, call me. I will get back to you. I usually do it within 24 hours. It's just that I literally get hundreds of emails a day, and if it's not someone I communicate with regularly, it goes into junk mail. So call me and I'll call you back, and I'll even give you my cell phone, and you can text me and all that good stuff. So the reason the reason I'm talking about this is, as I mentioned, as a statewide domestic and sexual violence attorney, I'm not in court every day with the divorces and those types of protective order cases. But people who need legal representation find me. Either legal aid is closed up, or like VLAS does a lot of point of contact, like phone legal services. So people need actual legal advice, and especially low-income people have trouble being able to get that. So folks call me and find me, and as an attorney, I am allowed to give them legal advice. So I do that on a regular basis. I can work with you and brainstorm. I work with advocates all the time to help brainstorm about their clients' issues. And over the past 7 years since I've been at Virginia Poverty Law Center, I would say that over half of the cases that are calling me for help with domestic and sexual violence are also dealing with some immigration problem, and an abuser using that to manipulate the victim and prevent her from getting help. So the legal aid offices, many of them they, like everyone else, are dealing with reduced funding. They usually cannot take on the immigration cases of their clients. There are some offices that get special federal grants to do that, but most can't. So I felt like that's something that I could fill, a gap that I could fill and address. So in 2009, I started this fledgling clinic to help undocumented domestic and sexual violence victims get their legal status. And that's some of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go over immigration basics, some of the language, and we're going to talk primarily about two types of visas that our clients can qualify for. The VAWA, self-petition, or Violence Against Women Act self-petition, and the U visa. So have you guys heard of those types of visas? Yes, no, maybe, no? Okay. I'm also it's in the materials, but I'm really not gonna go over these that much, but trafficking visas or T visas are available for some of our clients, and asylum petitions that are based on being female, being a member of a particular social group, being female. All right, so what are the agencies that make up immigration? So there's Department of Homeland Security. It used to be immigration. It used to be called immigration, or INS, right? Immigration and Naturalization Services. Now everything is under the Department of Homeland Security, both law enforcement, which is ICE, and the department that reviews visas and either approves or denies them. And that's USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. That's where, by the way, USCIS.gov, that's where you would go to get the immigration forms. They're really excellent. The instructions are excellent. If you go to them, you can see that they kind of reflect the training that I'm going to be doing today. So, immigrants versus non-immigrants. So these are probably terms that we use, that we conflate and use interchangeably. But an immigrant is someone who has a green card. And a green card is the same thing as having lawful permanent resident status, or LPR status. A person who's considered a non-immigrant is someone who has a limited visa, right? A visa that's either they're here as a student, so that's based on the activity that they got the visa for, being a student. or tourist, or being a fiance. So those are some of the types of visas that are available for people. And that's on this slide right here, about non-immigrants. So usually how it's supposed to work is you get it in your country of origin, right, and before you come to the United States. And that allows you to stay in the United States for some limited period of time. And we are on your slide 5 right now. So as I just mentioned on slide 6, these are some of the different types of visas that someone might have. And just to keep in mind, so when you fill out these visa applications, first off, I'm used to, I think we're all used to filling out forms, right, for various things, whatever, maybe travel reimbursement, whatever it might be. So you print the form out and then you just copy it over and over again, right? Maybe you do it on the computer, but it's probably the same template that you originally got some time ago, unless someone told you to update it. You can't do that with visa applications. You have to use the most recent forms. And how that works really is that, so for example, if I were to meet with a client tomorrow, I would want to pull up the form either today or tomorrow and do it with her. I don't want to pull up a form 3 weeks ago and do it with her, because it's possible that that form has been updated and that old form is not going to be accepted by United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. And so what that means, practically speaking, is that you put this giant packet together and you send it in, and months later you get this notice that it's been rejected because it was on an old form that they no longer use. You don't want that to happen to you. So you have to use the updated forms, and they will allow some previous additions, so you're not always having to do things right at the last minute. Also, everything has to be in English. So if someone is born, a lot of documentation might be a birth certificate, marriage certificates, things that may have been issued in a foreign country in a foreign language. All of those documents have to be translated. If that's submitted as part of your application, and it's a basic element of the visa application, you have to have a translation.
What do you mean you have to have a translation?
You have to get it translated.
Your birth certificate, let's say, I'm sorry, if you have a
Yeah.
birth certificate, you're born in another country, your birth certificate's issued in that language, you have to have it translated into English
Yes.
By whom?
It can be someone who certifies, let's use Spanish for example. So they certify that I am competent in Spanish, and this application or translation, this translation